So get excited. So first thing we have to do is make sure you download from these two links. You'll download our sprite and you'll also download the background that we'll use for this game. Okay? Next, make sure you get onto scratch.mit.edu. You should be logged into your name so that way you can save the project. Okay? So here, I'm already logged in. I'm ready to go. And first thing, I'm not going to be using a cat sprite for this project, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of him. Then, I've already downloaded my sprite and my background into the computer, so I'm going to go ahead and get that up. I'm going to get my sprite first. And my sprite is in, so you should know where it is in your computer. Mine is just over here in my desktop. So you'll see this is my sprite. So this is what we'll be using for today. Okay. So now we're going to do a lot of code with this. So get ready. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do events. When my flag is clicked, that's when I will start my movements. I want this to be a little bit smaller, so I'm going to go ahead and go to looks. And I'm going to change my size to, I'm going to say a lot smaller than this, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to 15%. So let's see. Yep, that looks about right. I might actually want it to be just a bit bigger. 20. So remember, you can play around with this to see what best fits your screen. I'm going to leave it at 30 for now, and if I want to change it later, I can. Because that's the best part about coding. You just keep playing around with it. And I'm going to go ahead and come over here. 2x. So the other thing I wanted to do is make sure I have my if and then statements. So I'm going to go ahead and put this if and then statement into it. And so I'm going to be working with my keyboard. So if I have my keyboard pressed, so I'm going to use this right here. Make sure it goes inside my, yep, there we go. And if, I'm going to move me down just a little bit. If my right arrow is clicked, then I want to make sure that, so right now I have, whenever my flag is clicked, it's going to set the size to 30%. So whenever the flag is clicked, it's going to reset itself. So there's a couple of other things that I wanted to do. The other thing I wanted to do is make sure it's pointing in the right direction. So I'm going to make my pointer to -90. And I also want to make sure that it goes to -12 for my x and -139 for my y. I'm just going to change that up a little bit. And so whenever it resets, I always want it to be right over here. Now, we're going to move on to my if-then statements. So it's going to show me how I can move left and right and how it's going to affect the game. So first thing I need to do is get started by going to my variables. I'm going to create a new variable called x speed. So that just means the speed of x on the x-axis. So go ahead and write in x speed. And remember, when you're coding, if you have two words together, usually that second word is a capital letter. So you'll see that in X speed. I'm going to do for all sprites. Okay. So now you'll see that X speed has showed up under my variables. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and it says set my variable to 0. So I'm going to bring this over here. So that means whenever it resets, I'm going to always have it come back to 0. But I'm going to set my X speed to 0. So you'll see that that also changes over here. X speed is 0. Now I'm going to move on to my if-then statements. So if my right arrow is pressed, then what do I want it to do? I'm going to set my X speed to 5. And then if my left arrow, so I have to go back to my if-then statements. So I did my right arrow, now it's my left arrow's turn. I'm going to go ahead and go to sensing for my arrows. I'm going to put that in there. And if my left arrow is pressed, then what's going to happen? Then I'm going to go back to my variables and I'm going to set my X speed. So I just did my X speed is 5 when I'm using my right arrow. So when I'm moving this way. Now when I'm moving my left arrow, I'm going to go to -5. Now I'm going to go ahead and change my X. I'm going to go back to my motion and change X by. So I have changed my X by, and I want to change it by my X speed. And you'll notice that when I try to type that in, that doesn't work, right? It'll just give me at least two letters or two numbers that I can put in. So to change my X by X speed, I remember that that was my variable. So I'm going to go under variables, and I created that variable. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and try to put it into change X by, right? So now my X is going to change by X speed. Next, I want to make sure that I set my, this will be a little tricky, my X speed to, and so this part you're going to need an operator. Okay, so under operators, you're going to see something star something, right? Blank star blank. That means blank times blank. I'm going to drag that into my 0. So set X speed to blank times blank. Inside my blank, I want it to be my variable X speed. So make sure my operator's in there, and inside my operator, my first thing should be X speed. So let's see if we can do that over here first before we move it into our full coding. X speed times 0.9. And then we're going to go ahead and grab that and move it up. Now, we're going to have this do it forever. So I'm going to go back to my control and put that under forever. And now it's ready to go ahead and come to my complete code. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay. So now I'm able to move my ship left and right. Perfect. Okay, so our next step is to get our backdrop. So I'm going to go ahead and add a sprite again. And I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to just go ahead and uploaded it. So I have my back costume over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to control, go to events, and when the flag is clicked. So that means that I want both the spaceship and the space, my background, to move whenever the flag is clicked. Right? Because you'll notice for the spaceship, I did when the flag is clicked. So now I'm going to make sure it goes to I'm going to make sure it's more centered. I'm going to get 0 and 0. Right? So that looks a lot better. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a clone. Create a clone of myself. And just like before, I'm going to create a new variable because I want my background to scroll. So my new variable is going to be called scrolling speed. And remember, when it's two words, right? Scrolling and speed, I'm going to capitalize the S. Because usually when you're coding, you like to put together all the words into one word. Right? But to show that it's different words, you capitalize the first letter of the word. So here I have scrolling, S-C-R-O-L-L-I-N-G, speed, capitalize S-P-E-E-D, speed. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set my scrolling speed to 4. And I'm going to go ahead and do my if-then. But now I'm going to include an else. So now I'm doing the if-then-else statement. So here I have if, and I'm going to be talking about my Y position. Right? So that means it's going to go up and down because that's the way I want it to scroll, up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and go to operators. And I'm going to say, I have this in here. If something is greater than something, then. So here, if my Y position, so for this, I'm going to go ahead and go to my motion. So I'm going to talk about my Y position. If my Y position is, let's say, less than negative 340, then I want to change my Y. And here I'm going to go back to getting my scrolling speed in there, but I need to do an operation. So I'm going to go back to operators. And inside operators, you'll see, just like before, blank times blank. So I'm going to try to get this into change Y by. And I want to say scrolling speed times -1. And remember that I can't just write in scrolling speed. I have to go to my variables, which I've created. And I'm going to put that in my scrolling speed, in my blank, times, and here I'm going to have -1. And so here, I want this operation to go inside change Y by. No, that's not what I wanted to do. No. I'm going to go ahead and try to move this into, let's see if I can get this by itself. That might help. Yep, there we go. So, if my Y position is less than -340, then change my Y by scrolling speed times -1. Else, that means or else, I want you to go ahead and go to, so I'm telling it what to do. I want it to go to, I want it to change its X and Y position. It's going to go to X, which is going to be 0, and y, which is going to be 345. And why is my x 0? Because I don't want my x moving. I only want my y moving up and down. Right? And this is going to go on forever. I'm going to add for my control forever. Ooh, there we go. I'm going to bring this onto my full code. So let's see what that looks like so far. So this is not what I want it to look like just yet. So that means I'm going to need to do a couple more things. Next, I'm going to have another code for this. I'm going to stop this. And here I'm going to say, remember I added a clone here, create a clone of myself. Now when I start as a clone, I wanted to give it a different control. I want it to go to x and y. And remember, just like this, x is going to 0, y is 345. So x is 0, and here I'm going to say 345. And I'm going to use my if then else statements, which is in control. So I'm going to come over here. So here, if, and just very similar to this, actually is very similar to this, because I wanted to do the same thing that my original sprite was doing, right? So instead of doing all this, let's see if we can just try to copy and paste. So here I'm going to delete this block and see if I can just copy this whole block. Ooh, nice. So because I was able to copy it, I didn't have to do that whole thing over again. So now because I've copied it, I also need this to go on forever. So let's make sure I have that control in there. And so this is what your code should look like right now. Right? So this is everything that it should look like right now. So here you'll notice that this is not what I want it to look like. So actually here I put y position is less than. I'm going to change that to greater than. Let's see if we can operators. So less than. Here, let's try this one. Oop. It's not what I want. If y position is less than negative 340, try to put that in there. Oh, let's actually duplicate it first. Duplicate. So I have 2, and I can put that in here, and is greater than, right there. And let's get rid of these. Delete 2 blocks. Delete block. Okay. So you'll see that it's scrolling down. Now we have to go ahead and find a way to fix it from so that way it can take up our entire background. Okay? Okay. So now my background looks a little fuzzy. So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure it takes up my entire backdrop. So I'm going to go under costumes. Make sure you're under your background sprite, and then go to costumes. And in costumes, you'll notice that yours might be a little bit smaller, right? So you're going to go ahead and enlarge it. And the way to do that is you'll get an arrow. So I actually need to. You'll get an arrow that looks like this. And you can control how big or small you want to make it. So yours might look like this right now. And what you'd want to do is scroll it out so that way it gets bigger. So that way it'll take up the entire background. Okay. And once you have that, so for me, I'm actually just gonna undo what I just did. And so once you have that, what you'll do is go back to your spaceship, and you want to make sure your spaceship is in the front. So you're going to go to looks and go down to go to front layer, and you're going to add that in the beginning because you want to make sure that it's in front of your backdrop. I've already added that, but you can go ahead and put that in there. And so now what it should look like is that now you can see that we have a scrolling background. Okay. So our next step will be in the next video. Okay. So now let's take a look at what my coding looks like. So I'm going to press that green button. And so far it looks good. There's a background scrolling. I have my spaceship. But hold on. There's something wrong with my code because it just stopped because I saw that blank white space. So I'm going to look back into my coding. I'm going to make sure this is the same as this. Here's something that I notice. Do you notice anything that might be different? Well, here it says if y position is greater than -340, but here it says if y position is greater than -350. I want to make sure these two numbers are the same. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. I'm going to change this, -340, right? And let's see if that made a difference. So I'm going to make it go. And so remember, whenever you're having trouble, you have to look back into your coding and see if there's something that you missed, right? And that's the best part of coding. You get to fix your mistakes. And that looks good to me. All right, next up, we will be creating another sprite. This time we're going to be creating our own sprite. So we're going to go to choose a sprite, and we're going to go to paint. In paint, right, we're going to go ahead and, I'm going to move myself along here. We're going to go ahead and zoom into this. And so here I'll get to see what it looks like on the screen as well. And right now I want to make a bullet coming out of my spaceship. So to do that, I might want to keep my, I might want to keep some rectangles. Let's see what that looks like. So, so right now this is what it would look like, but I can make it, I might want to make it a different color where the outline is not black. That way it doesn't blend in with the background. And so right now I have a bullet that looks like this. Alright, let's see how that comes out. I might even want to make it, so you can add on to it. You can change the look inside. I might even want to make it a little lighter. Let's see what that looks like. Let's see. I want to make it more central, so I'm going to go ahead and fill it with this blue. And my outline, I'm going to go ahead and make that, let's say, maybe a darker blue. And let's see. Yeah, so that can be my bullet for now. And so remember, you can play with it however you'd like to. And so, let's see what that looks like. So I don't like the way that it's dark, so I might even want to go back and play around with it until I get what I wanted to do. Let's see. So I really want it to stand out. So remember, you can play with this however you want. For me, I kind of want my fill, that means the color inside, to be to stand out more. So let's see. Yeah, I like that a little bit more because now I can see the red on my black background. Now I'm going to go back to code. I can stop this for now. And I'm going to go to, let's see, go to my control, my events. And I might move this up here for now. So I'm going to go ahead and click when my flag is clicked. I'm going to leave my size. So I'm going to make sure that my size stays 100% because I like the way this looks. So set size to 100%. And remember, you can make it bigger or smaller. So if I put like 200, I don't like that. So I'm going to keep my 100. I think that was a good size. Let's see. Yep. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and put in hide because I don't want it to show it off right away. And now I want to make sure that it goes where I want it to go. So I'm going to go into controls. Now I'm going to do my control for this under forever. And I need my if then statements. So I'm going to put that in here. And in my if then statements, I want it to sense when the spacebar is clicked. So when the spacebar is clicked, that's when I want the shooter to come out of my spaceship. So I'm going to go ahead and click when spacebar is clicked. Then I want it to, let's see, I'm going to let it create a clone of itself. So that way once it goes off, I can create another clone that looks just like it. And then I'm going to wait 1 second before I can make another clone of itself. So I'm going to move that over here. So this is what it should look like for my first one. But you'll see that I need to give my clone directions too. So I'm going to go ahead and say when I start as a clone, I'm going to show myself under looks. And then I'm going to go to actually do this. Let me take a look. So here, I'm gonna, under my motions, I'm gonna go to spaceship costume because right now I want to make sure it says that when this comes out, when my shooter comes out, it's coming out of my spaceship. So that's why I have go to spaceship costume, right? And that was under motion. Now, once it does that, I'm gonna let it repeat itself under control. So it's gonna repeat until it touches the edge. So when it goes off and it touches the edge, right, I want to change my Y. So let's go ahead and get that in first. So under sensing, so as soon as the clone senses it, here, touching the edge, I'm going to go ahead and change the Y. So it'll be under motions. I'm going to change my Y by 10. And then after it's done, I'm going to go ahead and delete that clone. So let me take a look at my control. I'm going to delete my clone. Let's see. Delete this clone. All right. So let's see what that looks like. So right now I'm pressing my space bar, and you can see that my red bullet is jumping out of it. All right, perfect. Now, the next thing I wanted to do is I'm gonna stop this right here. I need to create a space. I need to create maybe some aliens or other spaceships that are the enemy. So I'm gonna go ahead and create that as well. So just like I created the bullets, I'm gonna go ahead and use paint to create this as well. So for this one, you can kind of do it however you feel like it. For mine, I kind of liked using the squares. And I might want to use a different color just because my bullet's already maybe green. And let's see, actually my white one is fine. Here, let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and create my, ooh, that's too big, right? I might want to make that smaller. And make it into a smaller rectangle. Oh, I like that size. And then you can go ahead and just add anything else you would like to add to it. And you can make this bigger so you can kind of see what you're adding. So, I mean, just like we did with the spaceship, you can also find an icon to download and use that as your as the enemy spaceship. But you can also create your own however you want. I might even want to make a little triangle back here. So really, this is however you want to do it. Let me see, I don't know if I like this. And maybe I'll add a little color to it. So I don't like blue because it doesn't show me what it looks like, so I might even want to go white. Let's see. So that's what I'll have for mine, but you can do whatever you like with it. Yeah. And so for this one, what we'll do is, let's see what it looks like so far. Yeah, so this is my enemy, and I want to make sure that's what I'm shooting at. So I'm going to go ahead and add my code for that. And in my code for that, it's going to look like this. I'm going to go back to events. Remember, everything is going based off the movement of when I click on my flag. Right? So when my flag is clicked, at first I'm going to hide it because I don't want it to be the first thing I see. So we're going to go under hide, just the looks. I'm going to hide it. And then I'm going to make sure that as soon as I start, my score is going to be 0. And remember that should be under variables. So under variables. So you'll see that I don't have score here. So I'm going to add a variable called score. C-R-E. score, score. I'm going to press OK. And so look, I'll have my score for 0. And you'll see these other two that we don't really need, so I'm going to go ahead and just hide that. So now I just have my score. And I'm going to set my score to 0 as soon as I start my game. And then I'm going to set my size to 100 so it stays the same size. And remember, you can make it as big or smaller as you like. I like 100, but if you wanted to do 300, you could kind of see what's kind of hidden now. But you'll see that it's really big, so I'm just going to stick with my 100 for now. And then I'm going to go under Control, Forever. I want it to wait 4 seconds before it shows itself. So I'm going to go under Wait 4 seconds. And then when it's done waiting 4 seconds, it's going to create a clone of itself. So you'll see a lot of this is about clone because it's just repeating. So I'm going to make a clone. And once I've created a clone, that is it for the original. But now I still have to take care of my clone. So now when I start as a clone, I'll have, when I start as a clone, so that means once I shoot it, it should disappear and a new one should come. And when I start as a clone, I want it to go to go to an X position. Yep. So I'm gonna go to X. Let's see. My Y is gonna be 180. So I'm gonna make sure you have that in there. 180. And for my X, here I'm gonna try to put in a random number. And I want it to be within my board. And so it's usually from negative 240 to positive 240, but I kind of want to stay closer within. So I'm actually going to make it from negative 200 to 200. So in order to show that, I wanted to pick a random number. I'm going to go under Operators. And then I'm going to go ahead and say pick random from negative 200 to 200. And I can just put that into my X. And then this is going to repeat. So I'm going to go back to my control. And it's going to repeat until my y-axis. I'm going to go back here to my motion. My y-axis is less than negative 180. But in order to add that, I need to go to my operators. Less than 100, less than 50 here, but so I'm going to change that to less than 180, and I need my y-axis to be less than 180, so I'm going to go back to my motion, y position, less than 180, and I'm going to change my y by -4 whenever that happens. So instead of 10, I'm going to say -4. And so this will repeat itself. And then once it does that, I want it to delete itself. And once we have this, we actually need another clone. So I want to give it another, whenever it starts as a clone, I want it to give it another control. So I'm going to say when I start as a clone, I also wanted to show and once I have a show under controls on forever, I'm going to use my if then statements. If it touches, so here I'm looking for sensing, because if it touches that sprite that I created, then I want it to delete itself. That means that I shot it and you're done now. So I'm going to say if it's touching sprite 1, right? Because sprite 1 is over here. Then I want it to do two things. One, I want to make sure that my score changes by 1. Right? So that means every time I shoot at it, my score here would increase by 1. And then once it's done that, I want it to delete itself. Delete this clone. Okay, so let's take a look. So it's shooting. So here, hold on. Let me see. So I noticed that there's something wrong with my code, so I can go back into my code and kind of see where I can fix it. Let's see if this will help. Oh, the other thing is it's also behind my background, so I might want to come to the first layer. So let's go under looks and see if that helps it. Go to first front layer. Let's see. Okay, so let's take a look at what it looks like right now. So when I press go, I'm gonna move this over here. And so I'm waiting my 4 seconds, but 1, 2, 3, 4. Still, there's no clones, right? And I also noticed that there's a clone of my spaceship that I don't want. So right now I'm gonna go ahead and fix those 2 problems. I have to first see why it's not creating a clone. I'm looking at my coding. This seems right? Because I know when this is clicked, I want it to go on forever where it creates a clone of itself, and then every 4 seconds it would create a clone of itself. Now, let me take a look. When I start as a clone, so here I notice that my Y position is less than 180, but what I wanted to say is less than negative 180. And let's see how that affects my coding. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And now I can shoot at it and it'll be gone. Right? So here's 2 things that I want to fix. One, I don't want this here and I don't want this here. This is my original, so what I'm going to do is hide it. So to do that, I'm going to get rid of this one. And I want to say, my original, I want it to hide it. And let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here we go. And look, you'll see my score changes as soon as my bullet touches it. Now, I also want to get rid of my original clone for my spaceship. So that means just like I hid it here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to my spaceship. And let's see. There we go. So I hid myself. So here, Okay, let me come back to that. But here I'll create a clone, and that way I can hide my original as well. But before I do that, let me show you the last part of this, where I'm going to go ahead and create a new sprite where I can put my score. Actually, there might be a backdrop for this. Yeah, there might be a sprite for this. Choose a sprite, and let's say line. So I can use this red line, or I can even make this a little bit bigger. So I can put my score down here. So you can create a line, or I might actually get rid of my line. Or you can create your own line down there, just like we did before in Paint. So in order to do this, just go ahead and click that line, and I want it to be, I'm going to make it a rectangle actually. I'm going to fill it in with more of a gray feel, and then my outline can be white. And this, I might make it a little bit longer this way. I wanted to fill my entire bottom part so I can see how the dimensions change on my screen as well. And I'm going to try to move it down here. And I think that'll be big enough for my score. Perfect. Okay, so that's good to me. And I'm just going to put some code to it to make sure it does exactly what I want it to do. And you can also leave it like that, but you can also add code just to make sure it's all set. So when my flag is clicked, I always, so forever, want it to go to x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0. Go to so I can leave it just like that. And here is my spaceship. And now what I need to do is go ahead and get rid of that duplicate of myself. But you'll notice that my score changes when I hit it with my, there we go. And so if you feel like it's too slow for you or too fast for you, you can slow it down in your coding, or you can make everything bigger. So you'll see as soon as I shot it, my score went up a little bit more. It went up by 1 every time. So now I just have to go ahead and delete this my original spaceship. So go ahead and just play around with that, and that's how you get your spaceship shooter game. Good luck and have fun!